Welcome to Politics News Wolf US channel. When the first assassins in world history are mentioned, of course Hassan Sabah and the Hashashes come to mind. The mysterious assassination team spread its effects to a much wider area than their caliber with their striking actions. Centuries ago, this group proved to history how much resounding an assassination attempt can make. This strategy is now heavily used to end Russia's war in Ukraine. In other words, some partisan groups or groups opposing the war in Ukraine target the key Russian political and military officials with assassination attempts. Since the Russian invasion of Ukraine, Moscow administration officials Putin have been subjected to numerous assassinations, bombings, and drone attacks. If you remember, on the night of May 2 and 3, 2023, it was reported that the Kremlin was attacked by 2 drones. Russian officials claim that the attacks targeted the official presidential residence with the Kremlin complex, describing it as an assassination attempt on President Vladimir Putin. As you can see, the effects of the war had reached Putin's office, but the assassination attempts did not end there, of course. Recently, one of the key men of Russian leader Vladimir Putin was mysteriously assassinated. Let's take a look at this stunning news in all its details. The assassination act, which made a big impression on the agenda, was carried out in the Nizhny Novgorod region. Russian politician and writer, Zakhar Pryalpin, one of Vladimir Putin's key men, was injured when the car he was in exploded. Also, after the explosion, the driver of Putin's keyman Pryalpin was killed. It turned out that the deceased driver was a Ukrainian citizen. According to the information obtained, explosives were placed under the vehicle. With the explosion, the wreckage of the car dispersed to 50 meters. Reports of the assassination were that the explosion was only 100 meters from where Pryalpin's daughter had been released to her relatives. It was reported that Zakhar Pryalpin's health condition is critical. A helicopter was standing by to take him to the hospital. It was very striking that Pryalpin, who had turned from a pro-Kremlin novelist to a politician, was openly attacked after visiting Russian-occupied Donbass. The allegations that Pryalpin's car was being followed increased the question marks in mind even more. A staunch supporter of the Kremlin's invasion of Ukraine, Pryalpin was a Russian nationalist writer who led the political Party for Truth until it merged with a Just Russia in February 2021. Zakhar Pryalpin was serving as a battalion commander in the Donbass region. Also, he had been boasting a great deal in recent days about his exploits in the far-reaching occupation. The Russian politician and writer supported the strong rhetoric of Yevgeny Prigozhin, the leader of the Wagner Group, against Russian Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu and Russian General Staff Valery Gerasimov. This situation may have caused Zakhar Pryalpin's strife with Putin and Sergei Shoigu. So far, Pryalpin may have been targeted by the Russians as well. If he was indeed targeted by Russia, this act of assassination certainly serves as a message for the Wagner leader. Considering all this data, we can see that there is a possibility that Pryalpin was blacklisted by both Russia and Ukraine. But there were striking statements about who was behind this assassination. According to international news sources, the H movement had been after Pryalpin since the beginning of the year. Therefore, the partisan group formed by Ukrainians and Crimean Tatars took responsibility for the assassination attempt. But the Russian Foreign Ministry immediately blamed the West for the attack. It was quite interesting when spokesperson Maria Zakharova said that the H partisan group claimed responsibility for the attack, but still blamed the West. Russian news agency TASS reported that this assassination was not the first attempt against patriotic figures in Russia in recent months. The act of assassinating Prolepin was similar to the bombing that killed 29-year-old pro-Putin activist Daria Digina in August last year. Therefore, TASS also pointed out that Digina died last August after her car was blown up in the Moscow region. Digina was the daughter of Alexander Dugin, who pushed Russian propaganda, and is considered the architect of Russia's continued invasion of Ukraine. Therefore, there was speculation that the bomb targeted Alexander Dugin, an ultra-nationalist philosopher known as Putin's Rasputin. Except for Daria Dugina, many Russian propagandists were actually assassinated by Ukrainian partisan groups and anti-war groups. If you remember, the pro-Russian President Vladimir Putin military blocked us at Zen. The explosion occurred while he was gathering at a cafe in St. Petersburg and holding a conference. Famous Russian blogger Vladimir Tatarsky died. It was announced that the suspect in the attack, in which 30 people were injured, was Daria Trepova. Also, on March 6, 2023, a prevented assassination occurred against Russian businessman Konstantin Malofeev, chairman of the board of directors of the FSB Tsargrad Group. Sabotage and assassination attempts weren't just against Russia's most important figures. Russia has seen its infrastructure attacked by saboteurs. The railway line was bombed twice, most recently in Bryansk. The first attack occurred in the Bryansk region on Monday, May 1, 2023, and resulted in a derailment with no injuries reported. A second bombing in the same area the next day produced similar results. Last October, he witnessed a truck bomb destroy 2 lanes and damage the rail line of the Kerch Bridge connecting Crimea to Russia. There have been similar destruction attacks on Russian energy infrastructure. Recently, there were 2 successful drone attacks on fuel depots in the Crimea. If Ukrainian forces are behind these attacks, they must consider 3 legal principles when planning and executing them on infrastructure. The first principle is distinction. The distinction denotes the difference between a protected civilian or civilian object and a military object subject to attack. While these objects appear strictly civil, in reality they are considered objects of dual use. The military uses the rail transport system, fuel storage depots, and the electrical grid to run its operations. These are legitimate targets that are vulnerable to attack. In fact, Ukraine complies with this rule. In addition, saboteurs should consider the collateral effects of their attacks on infrastructure on civilians. This is the second principle. The principle of proportionality requires that the military benefits to be obtained do not cause unreasonable or excessive harm to civilians or civilian objects. Thank you for watching. The Russians gave an example of a possible violation of this principle with their missile and drone attacks on the Ukrainian power grid last fall. Had these attacks destroyed or disrupted the network for too long, thousands or millions of Ukrainians could have froze to death due to lack of heat. Finally, under the law of armed conflict, saboteurs are required to take measures to protect civilians when planning and carrying out their attacks on infrastructure. Many factors need to be taken into account, such as the proximity of civilians and civilian objects to infrastructure, the timing of the attack, and the methods used. The Ukrainian side pays much more attention to these criteria than the Russians. On the other hand, various actions by saboteurs and assassins were not attributed to Ukraine despite Russia's accusations. Ukraine denied responsibility for the drone attack on the Kremlin and the Kerch Bridge explosion. Ukraine has announced a postage stamp depicting the Kerch Bridge explosion hours after the incident. In summary, when we consider all this data and striking examples, we are likely to hear many more sabotage and assassination attempts until the war between Ukraine and Russia is over. Thank you for watching the video. We value your opinion. Please comment, share them with us, and thank you so much once again for watching this video. See you in my next video.